This is the best sphere in Blender. Arguably the best sphere you'll ever see. It's leagues above this sphere, and definitely better than this sphere. Hold on, wait. Let's just yeah, make that sphere more sphere. Okay, now it's even better than this sphere, which is by far my favorite sphere until recently. These are the three kinds of spheres we have by default in Blender. We have the UV sphere, which is pretty much the default sphere. We have the icosphere, which is just a subdivided icosahedron. And then we have the best sphere. If we go into wireframe mode, we can see that this is a single vertex. There's almost no geometry here at all, and yet it outperforms both of these spheres in just about every single way. Almost, kind of. It's not the most versatile sphere, but if all you want is a sphere, then it's quite clear, my dear, that this sphere is the best sphere. But Gavin, I hear you say, look at all of those points. Look at how sharp that sphere is. That point is. I'm sure you're saying point. I'm gonna say sphere, but you would say point. And I must agree, this is quite the pointy sphere, but it's not actually all that pointy. At least it isn't. Once we switch from Eevee to cycles and then switch into rendered view, you will see, well, and once we turn on the lights, it will be so clear how sphere this sphere is. I haven't set shade smooth to any of these, and yet this sphere is quite literally a perfect sphere. The other two spheres show their geometry, which is a bit of a problem. Now, obviously, we can correct for that by setting shade smooth. But if you zoom in quite closely, you can still see the edges of our sphere rendered polygonally. With the addition of some subdivision, that's not quite the problem, but we have another issue with these mesh spheres, and that comes in the form of their UV maps. You see, up until recently, the icosphere was my favorite sphere, but if we take a look at this sphere, we can see that its UV map is less than ideal. It has quite a few seams at the top and bottom, let alone the side, which is, may I say, unavoidable. And it makes it somewhat difficult if you want to simply throw an image onto your sphere. Contrast that with the UV sphere, which is the inferior sphere, at least based on geometry. We can very clearly see that it has a much nicer UV map that has 2 points that are somewhat annoying at the ends, but that's unavoidable, and it only has one seam running along the entire meridian. So recently I had an epiphany while working with some procedural planets that I could still use the well-distributed geometry of the icosphere and take advantage of the UV map of the UV sphere. So in the shader editor, I decided we could take the object texture coordinate and separate it into its spherical components. With this, we can take phi, which is the angle going around the equator of our sphere, divided by tau, and then add 0.5 to convert a value that ranges from negative pi to a value that ranges from 0 to 1, effectively normalizing phi. The same thing can be applied to theta, just keep in mind that it ranges from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2, so we need to do a slightly different operation, but it's the same thing in principle. And that gives us a nice normalized UV map which matches what the UV sphere uses while maintaining evenly distributed geometry that the icososphere has. And because this is a normalized and, dare I say, standardized UV map, we're actually able to chuck in an image texture node, open up an image that expects this sort of a UV map. Oh, I did that wrong. Hold on. Yep, I did the math wrong in my head, divided by pi and add 0.5, but regardless, that gives us our nice normalized UV map so that we can look at any image that expects this sort of a UV map, specifically images that map to planets. And naturally, it was immediately after finishing a live stream where I had just gotten done discussing this exact technique that I realized this technique does not only apply to geometry, it can even be applied to points. A point that has no geometry whatsoever. Well, aside from the singular point, but no geometry whatsoever. Thus, it has infinite resolution. It is perfectly smooth and is literally the most idealized sphere that could ever be created. So, if we switch our icosphere for a single point, suddenly we will see that with our geometry, there is no geometry, there's just this diamond shape. Actually, it's an octahedron, but that's beside the point. We have a single point with a radius of 1, but in rendered view, with cycles, specifically with cycles. This is not something that'll work with Eevee. Eevee doesn't play nice with this technique. Only cycles works with it. But now we have a sphere that we can zoom infinitely in on. Well, I mean, the image has resolution, but the geometry does not have resolution. We can zoom infinitely in on that horizon and it remains perfectly smooth. Thus, my dear, I present to you here what should be clear is a perfect sphere. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye! Okay, real talk, real quick. It's not rage bait that there's no green in this video. There was an issue with my recording software, and I noticed it only when I got to editing, so I'd already recorded everything, right? And I thought I knew exactly what happened. I thought I knew exactly how I would fix it, so I went, okay, I'll fix it after I edit, because it'll be annoying. The fix I had in mind would have been annoying to wrestle with the entire time while I was editing. No, actually, it's so much worse than I thought it was, and I can't fix it, not without, well, honestly, the solution would be to completely remake this video, and anyway, next time you'll get the full color palette, and until then, I'll see you in the next one, bye!